Welcome to Fireside Gaming. I'm Billum, and our retrospective this time around takes us back to the early 2000s for a look at Dot Hack Infection. I was among the people that got absolutely swept up in this series as soon as the Dot Hack anime came out, and I continued that further by playing the games. A lot of the series revolves around mysteries and trying to uncover the unknown, all while wearing the skin of a simulated high fantasy MMORPG. And that's one of the most interesting things about the Dot Hack games. They aren't MMOs and they don't connect online at all, with the exception of Fragment, but that's a Japanese exclusive. Granted, I do hear that it has fan service running with English patches available, so maybe I'll check that out someday, but still, irrelevant right now. For me, the allure of the Dot Hack series came from experiencing something akin to a proper MMO. Before this, my online experience with something similar was RuneScape. It was one of the few games my Walmart internet, yes, Walmart used to have its own internet service, could handle. And I'm sure you can understand why Dot Hack looked so dang impressive to me when previously this was all I knew of online games. While it's true that all of the characters running around the world, the in-game MMO that we play, are NPCs, they felt incredibly lifelike at the time. Seeing characters huddled around in corners trading and talking, players running around aimlessly, and others with silly names all gave a distinct 2000s MMO vibe. Adding to this is the fact that Dot Hack doesn't just start you off in the world. Instead, you always start up the game at your desktop. Here you can read and respond to emails from other players, change the background of your desktop, and even switch the music you listen to. When you're finally ready for some adventuring, you select the world icon on your computer to boot up the in-game MMO. And yet that's still not going to take you straight into the game. See, there's also a message board tied to the world. It's here that characters will post advice for newbies, the latest in-game events, as well as other strange happenings in the world. And one of my favorite details is that you can actually see these same players running around in the world after logging in, which is the next step in our journey through Dot Hack. I've avoided spoilers up to this point, but that can't really last. There's going to be loads of them from here on out as we get into the meat of Dot Hack Infection. And while normally I would give you a timestamp to skip to, that's just not going to be possible. This whole entire review is filled to the brim with spoilers, and I haven't separated the story away from the gameplay because I feel like it's integral to talk about them together. So take that as your warning. Our story starts with Kite, who I've named after myself for this run, being invited to play the world. This is an incredibly popular MMO created by the genius programmer Harold Horwick. This sees Kite create his character, a twin blade in green attire, and meet up with Yasuhiko, or as he goes by in-game, Orca. Orca is kind of a big deal in the world. He's known as Orca of the Azure Sea and is one of the descendants of Fianna alongside his partner, Balmung of the Azure Sky. The two gained these names after clearing the One Sin event, which was believed to be unbeatable. But now Orca wants Kite to join him in the world, and he's got the perfect starting area ready to introduce his real-world friend to this game. It's here that we learn about the unique system that the world uses for creating areas that players can explore. Each area is made up of 3 phrases that determine the difficulty element and other aspects of them. This time around, Orca has some easy ones picked out for us with Bursting Past Over Aquafield. This sends us to the area's field where we get a rundown of the basics of the game. That includes attacking enemies, using skills that are tied to our equipment, and making sure to stay healthy with the items available to us. We also end up diving deep into the dungeon of this field. Each area comes with one, and on the deepest level is the Got statue. These have a chest with rare items in them, such as new equipment or those that are good for trading. With our first run through a dungeon complete, it's time to return to the root town of Makanu. But we have to first travel back out of the dungeon. If we would have brought a Sprite Ocarina with us, we could have just teleported out, but them's the breaks of being new to the game. And this is where things start getting weird. While Kite and Orca are ascending the dungeon, they are transported to a strange area and they encounter a girl in a white dress. Orca seems to recognize her and wonders if the rumors he's heard are true. She gives him a book, telling him that it can bring about salvation or destruction. She then quickly departs, warning the two that it is coming. Right after she leaves, a rainbow effect opens up behind the two, and out of it comes a strange creature wielding a large red wand. Orca warns Kite to run, telling him that it will kill him. Orca tries to fight the creature, but he can't even harm it. With one strike, it breaks a shield around Orca before lifting him into the air in front of its staff. A blue bracelet appears around its wrist, and to Kite's horror, it blasts Orca with what appears to be strings of code. Orca's final words are an apology to Kite, telling him that it wasn't supposed to be this way, and that he should flee. With this, his body disintegrates, leaving behind the mysterious book as it flies into the sky. Kite is about to suffer the same fate, but is saved by a white staff that lands in the middle of the field. It forcibly exits him from the area, causing a system error in the process. The next time we see him, the book comes back down and absorbs into his body, all while he's watched over by an unknown woman. When Kite leaves the world and removes his headset, he tries to contact Yasuhiko but can't. He later learns that his friend was hospitalized following the events that transpired in the world and is now in a coma. Kite isn't sure how, but he believes he'll learn more about Yasuhiko's condition in the game. Kite posts on the board about his friend's state and then heads back to his desktop where he has a new mail waiting for him. This email comes from the girl in the white dress and it's a bit jumbled. However, it looks like she needs our help in some way. With his options outside the world exhausted, Kite signs back in on his quest to learn more about what happened to Orca. And the first thing he runs into is a very agitated Heavyblade. She's not too happy about Kite staring at her and calls him rude and a newbie. And while she might be right on both counts, there's no denying her personality is brash at best. After a quick run around the root town of Makanu to restore items and trade with other players for new gear, Kite prepares to head out on a dungeon run when he's approached by Black Rose, the same Heavyblade from before. She tells him about some interesting keywords, hidden, forbidden, holy ground, and asks that they go together. This area is unlike the others they've been to. There's no field or dungeon, but rather just a large church and a pathway leading to it. Inside, Kite defends Black Rose from a goblin before they both approach a statue that looks strangely similar to the girl in the white dress. Kite inspects the statue, reading an inscription that lists the names Skeith, Innis, and Magus, before becoming too faded to read. Black Rose also admits that she's a new player. She starts to tell Kite a little more about why she came to the world, but is cut off when the doors to the cathedral are opened by a winged knight named Balmung that tells them to leave because it's too dangerous. Just as he warns them, a new monster falls out of the same rainbow portal we saw earlier. Balmung defeats it, but it gets back up again like nothing happened, now covered in some strange green hexagons. Balmung explains that it's a bugged monster affected by a computer virus and that it now has infinite hit points. Black Rose charges the beast, blaming it for something, and Balmung follows after to try and stop her. Just then, Kite hears the voice of the girl, telling him to open the book. He does so, and the Book of the Twilight rewrites his character while at the same time granting him a bracelet that looks just like the same one used by the creature with the red wand to attack Orca. And Kite's bracelet works just the same as it too, as it lashes out strings of data at the infected monster, rewriting its code and allowing Balmung to kill it. Balmung immediately turns on Kite, accusing him of being just like the virus that is damaging the world. Before Balmung can attack Kite, Black Rose gives him an earful about talking the way he is to someone that saved him. Balmung decides to leave Kite alone for now, but warns him that he will kill him if he learns he's on the side of the virus. As Balmung leaves the church, he is chastised once more by Helba, the same woman that stood over Kite while he absorbed the Book of the Twilight earlier. But Balmung won't hear it as he doesn't listen to hackers. At least, not until she mentions that Kite is friends with Orca. Inside the cathedral, Kite explains to Black Rose how he activated the Book of the Twilight, as well as what happened to Orca. They log out for the night, and Kite learns that his board post about Orca has been deleted. Returning to our desktop, we have a couple of emails from Black Rose and Helba. Black Rose intends to help us, while Helba explains that the ability we used on the data bug was called Data Drain. It's a powerful ability that weakens enemies and pulls virus cores out of data bugs. She even warns Kite that using it too much may be fatal. Her final warning is that Kite is always being watched, and that he should prepare himself. At this point, I have to mention that Kite regularly reads the news from his desktop. This is updated throughout the game and provides players with insight into the world outside of Dot Hack's The World. And I know that might get a little confusing, but bear with me. For example, Ultimate OS is the operating system Kite and just about everyone else uses. It was created following the Pluto's Kiss incident that saw every computer in the world crash for 77 minutes. That, combined with the deadly flash incident that caused seizures, was enough to convince the world to switch to Ultimate for its reliability. Take that, Windows. It's also worth mentioning that the developers of the world is a group called CyberConnect, or CC Core. This is made up of Ultimate staff members and also acts as a fictional version of CyberConnect 2, the devs of the Dot Hack series. During their time trying to uncover the mysteries of the world and how people are being put in comas, Kite and Black Rose befriend several other players. A few of them are worth mentioning as they have larger roles in this game and the games to come. Mistral is up first, and she's likely going to be your main healer throughout Infection. She's a Wave Master, the world's version of a wizard, who seeks to collect all of the items in the game, and she becomes a close friend of Black Rose and Kite during their quest, even if she doesn't understand just how dangerous what they're doing is and is a bit of a scatterbrain. Next we have Mia and Elk. Mia is an anthropomorphic cat blade master that often hangs around with the shy Wave Master Elk. Mia is worth noting as she's actually able to see Kite's Twilight Bracelet even when it isn't in use. Elk also clearly has a thing for Mia, and while she doesn't quite understand romance, she does admit that she misses him when he's not around. Outside of these characters, there's also Natsumi, the cheery twin blade, Sanjuro, the heavy blade seeking rare katanas, Pyros, an odd-looking, loud-mouthed, gullible heavy axeman, and Gardena, the stoic long arm with a fan club. Kite also attracts the attention of CyberConnect developers while fighting data bugs. There's even a couple of attempts to overwrite his character by administrators, but even the devs behind the game can't overcome what the Book of the Twilight did when it altered his code. And included in those changes is the ability to hack gates. See, sometimes CC Core locks down certain areas of the world due to data bugs and other issues. However, Mia teaches Kite about gate hacking, which allows him to break through these barriers using the virus cores he collects from drained data bugs. Shortly after this, we run into Balmug once more, who hears our story about what happened to Orca. While he's unsure if he believes us, he warns us that the power of the bracelet is the same that put Orca in a coma. And not to be left out, Helba swoops in next to warn Kite about Leos, a system administrator that sees us as nothing more than a virus. She also provides Kite with a virus core that he needs for his next gate hack. Helba also makes it clear to Kite that she might be a friend or a foe, and that it's not necessarily she who's helping him, but rather Kite that's helping her. While all of this is happening, we continue to get emails from the girl in the white dress asking for our help. More players have also started to notice her and are talking about her on the board. This has us heading to Theta server, which houses the mountain root town of Dunloriag. Unfortunately, our first attempt to track her down doesn't go well, as CC Core changed the keywords in a board post about her. Black Rose finds the right keywords by messaging the original poster, allowing us to continue our search. This has us entering a strange white room at the end of a dungeon. Here we see a fancy bed surrounded by stuffed bears, and when we enter, we hear a disembodied man's voice.
And so, I shall name her Aura. Without you, she would not exist. The shining girl, Aura. We will entrust her with our will. Our future is in her hands. She is our...
These are Harold's notes. He's the original developer of Fragment, a precursor to the world, as well as the world itself. We learn that the girl's name is Aura, but not much else. However, there is one other note hidden here strewn among the bears on the floor. Epitaph 00.
Shunning the field, broken by wave, the shadowed girl whispers, surely I will return. Alas, the truth unbeknownst, awaiting her at journey's end, eternal mourning for her land.
Neither Kite nor Black Rose quite understand what this means, and that makes sense. But us as players might catch some references to the first scene we see when we boot up the game. The Epitaph of Twilight, which acts as key lore for the story and setting of the world, shares some similar terms to this, such as talking about shadowed ones, a wave, while also mentioning someone named Helba. It's all very interesting, but we don't have enough clues to piece this puzzle together just yet. and we won't by the end of the game. No matter the case, we end up in contact with a couple of Orca's friends. They shine some light on the rumors he mentioned just before being data drained. Some players believe that there's something more to the world, that it has another purpose lurking inside it besides just being an online game. Linda points us in the right direction with a set of keywords. She claims Orca found a strange room at them. And she's not wrong. In this area we find another white room. But this one is worse for wear. Large chunks of it are missing, and while we obtain a piece of the epitaph here, it too is fragmented. We get one more lead from a player named Meg, whose friend Alf went missing. However, after threats from CC Core, she deletes her post and refuses to share the keywords. Luckily, Helba saved it and sends the info over to Kite. It turns out Alf saw a girl and a creature with a red wand in the area. Helba also notes that the data volume in this area is increasing and that something might be there. Kite is positive the creature with the red wand is still there, and he tries to leave to fight it on his own, but Black Rose isn't allowing that. After making preparations, Kite, Black Rose, and in my case Mistral, all leave to confront Orca's attacker. It's here Kite runs into Aura once more, but she tells him that he's too late. We see the red wand appear behind her as it appears again. Aura is pulled into the air and data drained, her essence bursting into 3 pieces and being scattered to the far reaches of the world. No longer the newbie he was when this journey started, Kite steels himself to take on Skeith, the terror of death, and the first phase. This fight is nothing like our party has experienced yet. Skeith does not hold back with multiple heavy-hitting area of effect attacks and also data-draining members of our party, though they don't end up comatose, and it's suggested that it's the power of Kite's bracelet protecting them. Even with this onslaught, we land enough attacks and break the barrier protecting the creature, allowing Kite to perform a data drain on it. And while that doesn't defeat the phase flat out, it does weaken the creature to the point that it can be defeated. And it is. Skeith's defeat causes it to melt into a puddle of goo that quickly starts to boil. The ground around Kite begins to shake and large roots come bursting out from the ground around him. When it all ends, Kite sees a being above him. One so immense and horrifying that he's left speechless. Watching over all of this is Helba, and as the beast lets out a roar that sends Kite spiraling away, she blocks its attack. Before this creature, which Helba calls Cubia, can make another move, she teleports herself and Kite out of the area. And that is the story of Dot Hack Infection. And while I'm sure you have plenty of questions, we don't have answers yet. Here's the thing, Dot Hack Infection is the first part of a 4-game series, so if you fully plan to follow along with me through this quartet of games, it's going to be a bit before all of the secrets of the world are revealed. If what you've seen so far has whetted your appetite, I highly encourage you to play through these games yourself. But even with Dot Hack Infection beat, we're not quite done with this game just yet. There is one mystery of the world that we do get to solve in this game. While playing through Dot Hack Infection, players might notice a giant floating through the sky in the areas of the Mackanu server. This is one of those events that inspires a sense of awe and wonder in the player that never has an explanation in the main story, but always catches your eye. And with the game beat, we actually get an invitation to this area. It's here we travel on the Flying Fleet escorting the sleeping giant and eventually find our way to fighting the Parasite Dragon, a final boss that provides a rare set of twin blades when data drained. And there's still so much more about Dot Hack Infection to talk about. I haven't even brought up raising grunties, which is another of the game's extra activities. Players can do this by feeding them the various foods that they'll find in fields and dungeons, all of which shout their names when you approach them. If you raise your grunty right, you can unlock different ones and be rewarded with special items. You can even bring them out in the field and ride them around to avoid battles and make exploration easier. And while exploring, it's always fun to check out the local Spring of Mist. The water spirits Monsieur and Grandpa inhabit these springs. Players that throw an item in can receive a silver or gold axe. If they want neither, then they can get a upgraded or downgraded version of the item they threw in back, depending on the weather. This is another one of those small fun things that I've always loved about the world. Also, I won't go too much into it here, but I love that the world has its own lore and story. Players can learn about this throughout the games via post and reading up on other information both in and out of the game. There are various gods, legendary heroes, world-changing tragedies, mysterious events, and all sorts of other stuff going on in the background that never really comes up in the main story of Dot Hack. It's these details that really add an extra layer to the game and helps further sell the illusion that the world is its own game and that these events just happen to take place in it, rather than an in-game MMO used to tell Dot Hack's story. Another thing that sells this idea is being able to take part in special events happening in the world. In the case of Infection, there are the Goblin Brothers to hunt down that give out special armor, as well as challenges against other players to speedrun to the Got statues at the bottom of dungeons. I even really dig the magic system the game uses, where characters all make use of patterns or waves to fight off harsh waves that spread across the land, which in turn creates monsters and force the people into their bastion cities called root towns. These waves used by the players are the abilities in-game. You can even see this on the clothing and skin of characters. It's more set dressing than something you need to know about to play the game, but I find it really cool and I think it makes for a great aesthetic. And one of the key features of Dot Hack is keeping different weapons and armor around for skill variety. The game allows players to switch out gear even on the field or in dungeons. This can help you if you go into a field that maybe has creatures you weren't exactly expecting of that element. Granted, that is something you keep track of through the keyword system, but we all make mistakes, right? And I do have to acknowledge some of the potential cons of Dot Hack, such as the menus. There is a lot of menu diving to use abilities, items, and give commands to party members in the Dot Hack quartet. Considering turn-based RPGs are my favorite genre, this doesn't really bother me in the slightest, but I did figure it was worth mentioning just to try and be somewhat fair. And on that same note, the combat in Dot Hack isn't overly flashy. It's pretty standard to just press X and attack enemies. I won't get too far into this, but the GU games, which are the sequel to the Dot Hack Quartet, get around this with a combo system and a quick menu that gives players access to 4 abilities of their choice without having to dig through lots of extra screens. I also know that some players get annoyed by the fact that other characters in Dot Hack don't upgrade their own equipment. This leaves you having to trade with NPCs to get good gear for them, or finding it in chests while dungeon diving. On the one hand, I don't really get this complaint because this is the norm for any RPG. Of course you have to buy new weapons and armor for each party member. But on the flip side of that, I do understand the argument that these are supposed to be other players in the world, and they should probably care at least a little bit about the gear they go into battle with. I mean, this is an MMO. Being geared and spec'd out and everything is a big deal, and they just won't do it unless you do it for them. However, the characters do restock consumable items while in root towns, so at least there's that. Oh, and you can give them more if you know you're heading into a really tough fight. That's another plus of this system. Trust me, nothing sucks worse than when Kite dies and none of your party members have resurrects, leaving you stuck as a ghost, watching your party eventually die without you. And if you didn't watch my video about how to get into Dot Hack, now's the perfect time to bring up the fact that it's part of a larger media franchise. And the various different types of media all play well together. There are several events and characters that show up in Dot Hack Infection that are tied to these. For example, Alf, the friend of Meg, is also one of the characters featured in the Dot Hack Zero light novel that bridges the events of Sign and Infection. You can also read through the first AI Buster novel to see Balmug and Orca clear the One Sin event. And we also see Sieg early in the game too. He's the boyfriend of Mai Minase, one of the main characters of Dot Hack Liminality. In fact, let's take a minute to talk about Liminality because it is very much tied to the Dot Hack games. That's because each of the games came with an episode of this OVA series, and it runs concurrently with it too. We're going to get into spoilers for this real quick, so here's an extra warning since this is technically a different piece of media. The plot of the first episode focuses on Mai and her dealing with Tominari Kasumi, the player behind Sieg, falling into a coma. In fact, she almost suffered the same fate, but managed to wake up in the hospital. She's helped in her efforts by Junshiro Tokuoka. He's a former member of CC Corps and is trying to figure out why Tominari and other players are falling into comas. This sees him and Mai explore the world together at the same place where Tominari fell into his coma. While there, A and C major plays. This note draws the player into the world and normally goes unnoticed by them, but Mai can identify it and resist the sound due to her musical background as a violinist. While this episode of Liminality doesn't make it completely clear what happened to her and Tominari, we do get some hints. While in the world, her and Tokuoka are onset by the same circumstances that affected Tominari. Some of the flashes that we see include Aura, as well as a shadowed player character that transforms into Skeith. Mai removes her headset, but Tokuoka is drawn in by A and C major. To save him, Mai removes his headset and breaks the computer. He wakes later and the two agree to continue their hunt for the reason why the world is putting people into comas. I'll also mention that we get a scene of a man crying in front of a grave of a woman named Emma Wyland. This isn't too important right now, but file it away for later because I'll be talking about it in a future video. Liminality also has its own secrets as well. Players can explore its menu to find Easter eggs throughout the multiple episodes. Another fun instance of this is the Dot Hack signed DVD releases containing keywords that players could use to access special areas that usually contain rare items. But that doesn't really start until Mutation, the second game in this series. These are just some of the great examples of how Dot Hack goes out of its way to connect all of its different forms of media. It does a great job at referencing each other without requiring players to have read or watched everything else to understand its main story. It's one of the best examples of a multimedia franchise that features these type of connections. And to make sure that I leave no stone unturned, I hope, I do have to mention the graphics and audio of Dot Hack Infection. Starting with the visuals, Dot Hack has an incredibly clear identity with its world and character designs. Its use of anime-inspired stylized graphics also means that it continues to look good to this day. The game is also sporting a good soundtrack with some fun tunes to listen to throughout the adventure. And the voice acting is just perfect. It features a lot of anime mainstay voice actors from this era, and they do a great job with their performances. Considering I was 12 at the time this all started, had a huge love for anime and JRPGs, and spent lots of spare time browsing forums and reading manga, there's no way I was ever escaping the allure this series has. There's something about it that just really does make you feel like there's something strange with the world, or maybe that there's something weird with the internet even in real life. And I understand that part of those feelings come from me growing up with the early internet. Things are more homogenized now, so it doesn't necessarily have that same feel, but it kinda did back then, and that could be my own nostalgia playing a little bit into it, but you know, that's just what it is. And because of that, I have to clarify that this review has some incredibly obvious biases to it. With that in mind, I don't really know if it's fair for me to score Dot Hack Infection, but I'm gonna try to give it a shot. I think the game is a solid 8, maybe even an 8.5, and is well worth playing. Especially if you love digging into a series where you have to do lots of research to connect dots and things like that. This is something I personally love, and I can lose hours just searching about lore online while reading the light novels and manga and watching the anime as well. And I hope that's enough of a recommendation to get more people interested in this series. Seriously, CyberConnect 2 is all about re-releasing the first 4 Dot Hack games just like they did with GU. They just need Bandai Namco to sign off on it first. And we really do need a re-release considering how expensive these games can get. But that's all I've got for you right now. I'll continue to play through and review the rest of the Dot Hack IMOQ games and cover their respective Liminality episodes while I'm at it. Heck, if there's enough interest, I might even consider story videos for some of the light novels and manga. It's not something I've ever done on the channel before, but I have a lot of love for Dot Hack, and I'd be willing to give it a shot. Let me know if that's something you're interested in the comments. Thanks for watching this video, and until next time, take it easy.